It's being set up. I think it'll probably take a second for folks to be able to get to there. Okay. Hey, Justin, I can see you on YouTube.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Hey, we can wait till folks get to clicking on it. I think show when folks are ready to roll. And it looks like people are rolling in.
Cool.
As we get set up. Thanks to everybody who's now connecting in. Part of the reason we like to do these previews is it gives us a chance to test out some of the technology and find out what buttons we didn't totally know how to press. Thanks for your patience. I think we can get started. There's a fair number of people, and I think probably folks will be able to roll in and out here on Friday, February 7th. I'd love to start by asking the other folks on the call to introduce themselves and their wonderful selves.
I can go first. Hello, my name is Justin Smith. I'm the Zooniverse team leader. And yeah, I'm just excited to see all our Zooniverse stuff come to life on Douglas Day. So.
Hi, Justin.
Hello, Denise.
Hi, my name is Denise Berger. I am a member of the Colored Conventions Project and have worked with Jim on every single previous Douglas Day to date. And I'm also, like Justin, very excited to see how the new and innovative depth and breadth that Zooniverse brings to transcribing will play out this Douglas Day as we deal with Anna Julia Cooper's archive.
I'm excited for this year. My name is Jim Casey. Likely many, if not everybody on this point has received emails from me of spam and otherwise. Denise and I began Douglas Day back in 2017 and have been growing together and with our larger sort of collaborative teams each year. And we're tremendously excited to have Justin and the rest of the group from Penn State joining us this year, who have really been taking leadership in so many cool ways on the project that we're about to get to walk you through in just a moment. All kinds of community outreach that Denise will be able to share a sort of brief moment about, and all kinds of cool things. So we'd also like to flag that there's about 60 other people who are not on this call who have also sort of helped get us here today that we'd like to say thanks to. And an extra thanks and giant welcome to all of the people who are organizing events this year. We literally would not be able to do any of this if it wasn't for people being so generous and dedicated and creative. It's really kind of a fun treat for us to get to learn from you all. So what we thought we would do today is a couple of things. First, we're just going to share a kind of very broad overview of the sort of program for February 14th that will be running from noon till 3, that we know many folks are running at different times. And then we'll walk a little bit through the schedule just to sort of share what some of the rhythms might look like, where you might sort of think about building in some of your own programming. Denise and I are then going to share a little bit just about how we have sort of learned from people about what makes for a successful event, sort of tips for facilitation. And then at about 12:15, 12:20, we'll be having Sabrina Evans join us. She's actually teaching right now. And she and Justin are going to explain how to get started transcribing, how it works. They'll show you all the incredible work that they've done with the folks over at Zooniverse to make it so that even people like us can learn how to transcribe these cool documents. Denise, would you like to maybe get us started here?
Absolutely. So based on our, there we go. So we did introductions. So I'm excited about, oh, no. This is the overview, isn't it?
Yeah, why don't I put the
overview. Are you going to post it on Zoom?
I'm going to put the schedule into the YouTube comments. People can see
Awesome.
that. And that will take you a direct link over to the schedule where we have posted it.
Perfect. All right.
Please
So for a quick overview, as Jim has already indicated, we're going to have the live broadcast. One of the first things that we're going to do, which is a traditional part of Douglas Day and has been for quite a while, is we're going to sing Lift Every Voice and Sing. As a reminder to the people who are at satellite locations, you should definitely make an effort to identify the complete lyrics, i.e. the first, second, and third verse, and have copies or be able to post it. Many people know the first verse. Lots of us know the third verse. Not so much the second. So let's try to avoid the stumbling and the uncertainty. So we're going to sing Lift Every Voice and Sing, and there are going to be a number of speakers on Frederick Douglass and Anna Julia Cooper, of which I believe I am one. Dr. Moody Turner is another. I believe Professor Foreman is also on the list, but I'm not sure. And there'll be a variety of different activities between 12:30 and 1. We are providing, as we always do, a Spotify playlist, which includes a number of songs which we feel appropriate to celebrating Douglas Day, a variety of genres. We are, of course, going to sing Happy Birthday, and just for clarity, that is the Black Happy Birthday song. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, that means the Stevie Wonder version. Don't worry, you'll catch up. There will be, again, speakers on Cooper, speakers on DC. There will be poetry readings. All of this will be coming straight out of DC from the host site at Howard. Again, another activity, a series of activities between 1:30 and 2:45, which you have the choice to participate in or not. If you are going to be busy during that time period, you'll be able to run the Spotify playlist and still keep an eye on what we're doing. Concluding that, we're going to gather, we're going to have reflections and reactions to the day. The live broadcast will be closing out at between 2:45 and 3, and again, we'll have closing reflections. That's a rough schedule of what we have planned for Douglas Day. And all of that is posted already, so people will be able to have access to it. And Jim said you just posted it on the YouTube as well, in YouTube comments, Jim?
Yep.
Yeah, so you'll be able to see and not be as confused as I rambled on and on from this list. So you can get an idea of what we have scheduled for the day.
Great. And we have actually managed to post the lyrics for Lift Every Voice and Sing this year with the 2 verses that we've sung in the past. What I'm also going to do right now is add to the YouTube comments, just in case people don't have YouTube accounts and all that sort of stuff already signed up. We just created a quick little Google Doc. We'll keep that open as we're talking today and going forward. We'll keep an eye on it. If people have questions in common, we can imagine that there's probably more than one person with any particular question. So we're happy to share that and make sure that we get all the things sort of attended to. So let's see. So just a couple of things that we have that Denise already mentioned. You know, we really try to sort of make these into fun events. You know, lots of times the histories that we're engaging with have lots of contemporary relevance of ways that perhaps don't make us always feel the most uplifted. But we're excited for Douglas Day as a sort of opportunity to be able to create spaces for joy as well, right? And so when we say get birthday cakes, we really mean get birthday cakes. It's really one of the highlights for me every year of getting to see all of the really creative cake decorating. I think this year we decided maybe next year we'll try and do like a great Douglas Day bake-off cake decorating contest, because that's really the fun part. And then just as a couple of sort of housekeeping matters, number one, please keep a sign-in sheet, some kind of tally. Once the event is over, we'll send you a feedback form. We're able to get a little bit better at this every year because of the feedback we've been able to get from folks organizing. You know, what do you need? What would have been helpful? What could have been more clear? That also helps us as we start to try and figure out how we're going to pay for this on an ongoing basis. The second thing is that we really love to see all of the social media that comes into the event every year. In years past, we've had thousands of tweets and Instagram posts and Facebook comments and YouTube. And this year we'll have a team of about a half dozen people paying attention, ready to answer questions there. If there are things that come up that aren't yet sort of easy to answer. pictures. We love to sort of help sort of build the conversation, the community that connects us across all of the locations, in addition to the folks who are in the rooms with us together. And so if you post on Twitter and Instagram especially, please use the hashtag Douglas Day. That way we'll be able to sort of see everybody's stuff all together. If you haven't already, we have new Instagram and Twitter accounts at douglasday.org, all one word, going out this year that we're slowly getting together. And so I think we'd be happy to take a few questions now if there's anything popping up. I think we should have Sabrina coming along in just a few minutes as we transition over to talking about Zooniverse.
So again, in terms of housekeeping, for the people who are hosting, for people who've done this before, you already know, but for people for whom this is the first time, you want to be as clear as you can if people are going to be parking, where they're going to park. If the room where you're going to be having the event is in the interior of the building, down a hallway, up some steps, you want to think about that and post signage. If there's security, you want to, in advance, let security know that you'll have this event so they'll be able to direct people. You want to really facilitate, if you're having people come on campus, facilitate people's entry onto the campus and ability to engage with the event so that it will be as smooth as possible. Because once it gets going, it tends to move at a pretty rapid clip. And then it's harder, it's like, oh, I got a text message or got a phone call and I can't, and you are hosting and it's moving. So just be aware that anything that you can do to facilitate your guests coming to spend Douglas Day with you, parking, navigating through the building, differently abled points of accessibility, anything along those lines that will make it easier for guests to come. It's really important to think about and to facilitate. These are things we've learned the hard way over time. So it's one of the things I wanted to add.
And while we're doing that, I'm going to add to both the Google Doc and to the YouTube comments an outreach guide that we prepared over the years. Lots of times, especially for those of us who are at predominantly white institutions, ensuring that there's a diverse room of folks in the room is not just something that naturally happens. But everybody likes an invitation to a birthday party. It's fun, it's informal, it's easy to show up, it's even easy to invite folks last minute. And so we prepared this outreach guide just as a kind of set of suggestions of folks to call, right? The Black Student Association, the Black Graduate Student Association. This year, especially Anna Julie Cooper has lots of strong personal ties to the Alpha Kappa Alpha Black sorority, right? One of the oldest Black sororities, the oldest one.
It is the oldest one. It's
the oldest one, but lots of times very active. They are already showing up in great numbers to the events down in DC and elsewhere. So lots of folks really enjoy sort of showing up to these. And even though we're only a week out, I think there's still plenty of time for folks to come through, even if they can only make it on their lunch hour. Come by, have some cake, meet a bunch of people, and maybe think about what community projects might come out of this. Maybe everybody could conspire together. So that outreach guide is there. We're happy to answer questions about that as well. We have a question just real quickly as we're transitioning about the hashtag. Just to repeat, it's hashtag Douglas Day in addition to all of our accounts. And then we'll be singing the Lift Every Voice and Sing that's posted on the website. So that's 2 verses. Denise is a stickler for the longer version. But I think we might let D'Angelo Bridges, who's leading this year, generously volunteering, just lead us through 2 of the verses. Perhaps one of these years we'll sing the full version, but we'll need a lot more time for that. Okay, Justin, why don't we maybe start to transition over to talking a little bit about Zooniverse?
Sure.
Maybe you could sort of help us start to get situated.
Sure. Are you able to share the link for the Zooniverse page in the comments if people want to look at it there?
I sure am. And maybe you want to share that this is the first time that we have shared it out into the larger world.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to maybe take a moment to just have a round of applause?
I don't know if I should applaud myself, but
I do.
Yeah, that's very cool though. Yeah, because it's pretty much all set. There's a few more little tweaks we're going to make to it, but the version that you're seeing here is basically the version that you'll be seeing on Douglas Day as well. So if you want to have the link just to be able to click around, I think I can also share my screen. Is that right? If I hit the share button.
Go on ahead.
So okay. So am I on the Zoomverse page now?
I can see it.
Okay. So the links, the URL for it's right here. Jim's also just posted it in the YouTube comments, but this is how you get there. I'm sure
And we'll
there'll
be
be,
circulating that through social
yeah,
media. We'll send it to you by email. Make sure
yeah.
everyone's got it.
I'm sure there'll be plenty of ways to get to the link, but that's the URL right there. So I guess the first thing I can point out, I'm signed in currently, but up here in the top right, if you do not have an account already, it'll say you'll have an option to either sign in or register. And so if you want to make an account, you can register there, but it's not necessary to make an account to do the transcription. Later, I'll talk about some of the things that you can do with an account. But
Justin, would you recommend that most people sign up for an account?
so I guess I would recommend it only because there you can then use the talk forums, which I'll get to in a little bit, and the talk forums I think can be helpful if you're running into issues with transcribing, or just if you want to share some other cool stuff about the transcriptions. And so you will need an account to do that. So I would recommend it, but if you know that you just want, if you don't have a lot of time, or if you just, want to try out a couple of transcriptions, then you're not going to be hindered in doing that at all by not having an account. But I would
And if I
recommend
can just emphasize real quickly, accounts are pretty quick to create. They're all free and easy to create. And one of the things that we've seen people do, if there is a worry about whether or not you can ask folks to sign up real quickly, is just sort of having a couple of accounts. If you have a few laptops or computers set out, just create an account for each one of them and sign up. That way we can also know to be able to credit the folks who have helped make these resources possible. So it's important for us to be able to cite the labor and the volunteers and all the energy that went into these.
Yeah, it's true. If you have an account, when we go back to look at the data, then we'll be able to see whose username contributed each transcription. And if you don't have an account, we won't be able to see it. We'll still be able to see your transcription, just not who did it. So it's a good point as well. So this is what the landing page looks like. And it's a little bit weird because what I would recommend is that once you get here, you just scroll down a little bit. And when you scroll down is where you'll see all the actual different categories that we have to transcribe. And this is really where I would recommend going in terms of deciding what materials you want to start on to transcribe. But if you want to, the classify button up here will also take you into a transcription, but it will just take you into sort of a random one. So I would recommend scrolling down first to come here. While we're on the home page, I can also point out there's some stuff at the bottom. Jim mentioned our social media. We have links to our social media down here. We have the Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We're all down here. Just some stuff about what the project's about is down here. Some statistics on how the transcription, where we are at with the transcription process. So that's all down here. We also have these tabs up here, which I'll talk about more in a little bit.
Justin, are you going to be able to explain to folks maybe a little bit about choosing among all of those options that are on the?
Yes,
on the
I can
There's certainly
do
lots of choices this year.
So let me just click on one just for an example for a moment. so let's say whatever one you click on, one thing you'll see over here is the field guide has now popped up. The field guide will allow you to see different information, which can be helpful for choosing which of the workflows or which of the categories you want to pick down there. So it'll tell you different names of institutions. So we have some papers there about Oberlin if you want to, so that's the college that she attended, so that can be helpful. Frelinghuysen gives you some, so all these correspond to different categories that you have to pick from. FAQ about the material, again, we have a lot of material from the Grimke's related to Cooper, and just some directions on how to transcribe are also mixed in here as well. Again, each one of these is kind of organized based to correspond to different ones of the categories for if you're deciding which ones you would like to pick from. Sabrina actually did a lot of work on the field guide.
I'm here officially.
And welcome, Sabrina Evans, fresh off of teaching. How was class?
It was good.
All right, do you want to introduce yourself maybe real quick, just for all the folks who are out there?
Sure, I am Sabrina Evans. I am, I guess, the project manager of the Douglas Day this year. And I helped with Zooniverse. I guess that summarizes it pretty well.
And I didn't know if you wanted to, I was just going through how to know which one of the different categories you wanted to pick by clicking on the field guides. I know you worked on that, so I didn't know if you wanted to say anything more about the field guide quickly.
I mean, I think for the field guide, beyond kind of having the list of all of like what the kind of categories are, the workflows are, there's also a section for kind of some of the main institutions Cooper was part of, just in case anyone was unaware. So there's a tab that says like, this was what the Frelinghuysen school was, this is what the colored social settlement was. These are the schools that Cooper taught at, just so that if they wanted to know for reference, they could access it.
Great, thank you. Could we maybe take just a half second for folks who might not have read any biographies of Anna Julia Cooper all that lately? Why is it so important to transcribe these papers? What are we actually sort of going to be looking at in terms of all of the different folders and collections and so on?
I think in kind of transcribing Cooper's papers, we get an understanding of all of the different kind of groups Cooper was a part of, and like who she was in correspondence with, and kind of the networks that she engaged with. And so getting to see how she was in conversation with W.E.B. Du Bois, or seeing that Frederick Douglass signed like an autograph book that she had, and getting a better understanding of like the community she was a part of, specifically in DC, is really useful for kind of looking at other kind of activist roots that, or kind of feminist roots that Cooper has to other figures that were in DC, outside of kind of reading A Voice from the South.
And I can just add to then on sort of like the technology side of it too, the transcription just makes these documents a lot easier for people to be able to search for all the reasons, and you know, they're important for all the reasons Sabrina said, and this just helps it make it more accessible to a wider community of people as well.
Yeah, great. We're looking forward to a large and exciting future for all these documents. I just want to interject real quick. Number one, to wave hello to our colleagues, Carol Rudisell and Lauren Cooper out at the University of Delaware Library, also part of the Color Conventions project that Douglas Day has emerged from, who are asking, beyond categories, is there a way that we can choose the document we want to transcribe?
Beyond the categories, you can't necessarily select a specific document, unfortunately, other than to just, you can continually refresh the page, and it will take you to another. So I just clicked on, you know, biographical data randomly, for example, but if I were to refresh being in that category, you can see that when it loads up, well, this one, sometimes a lot of them come from the same text, they look the same. I'll see if there's one that looks markedly different, though. Show it. some of the, this might not be the best category to
Yeah, there's a
demonstrate.
bunch of pages.
Okay, okay, but here we go. So you can easily see that this one's a different document. So by refreshing, you can get to a different document, but unfortunately, there's no way to specifically select a single document. You can only specifically select a single category, and then if there's one you're looking for, you can refresh. However, I will say this button here, the collect button, will allow you to add specific documents to a collection. Again, if you have an account and are signed in, and that way you can then have access to the documents anytime you want. But in terms of getting to a very specific one, it's a little bit random, unfortunately.
Those collections are a great task that we've added this year, because it means that if you find something that's really cool, you don't just have to download it. You can save it to your account and keep a list of really cool things that you've helped transcribe. So you'll be able to share that stuff out on social media and all that kind of cool stuff. Later on, we should also emphasize that there's a wide range of kinds of documents that come in here. The collections that you see on the homepage are reflections of the archive of her papers down at Howard University's Moreland Spingarn Research Center. And we wanted to be able to share somewhat of the experience of that archive with the folks who would be transcribing. And as those of us who work with archives in lots of different ways know, sometimes you never know what's going to be in there. We've seen everything in the Cooper papers, from postcards that she sent back and forth with friends with maybe just a few notes. It's beautiful out here in Colorado, to documents about her own performances and events for Lincoln Douglas Day back in the 1940s, all the way to her correspondence where she's talking about all sorts of important things, where she's writing letters to W.B. Du Bois, being somewhat, shall we say, short with him and impatient for him to figure it out a little quicker. She's a really charismatic writer, and the archive itself is a fairly sort of broad and diverse one, which also means that if folks load up something like correspondence, they might see a lot of handwriting in fairly dense ways or less dense ways. And if they don't feel comfortable with that, they can simply just go back to the homepage and try a different collection. There's lots of typed documents that we left in there, not because we couldn't probably, figure out to get some software to sort of recognize some of the characters, but we wanted to make sure that it was accessible for everybody, and not just those of us who are used to reading a little bit of 19th century handwriting. Okay, Justin, I'll let you keep up there. And I see a few more questions, and I'll start recording those as we circle back around.
All right, sounds good. So one thing you'll notice, the first time you click on a category, it should automatically pop up a tutorial for you. Since I've clicked on them all before, it doesn't, but you can always access a written tutorial right here at the tutorial button. So this will give you some additional information on how to transcribe, and you can click through the arrows. I won't read all of it out loud now, but when you're going to transcribe, this has a lot of helpful information and some visuals on sort of what we're looking for users to do in order for us to be able to get the best transcriptions possible. And then once you're ready to go in, this is what it will look like. I'll point out there's some different tools here that you have, so you can move around the document, you can zoom in on it, rotate it, also invert colors if that helps you. Get additional information by clicking this eye down here, including
Justin,
this URL.
Can I pause you right there just real quick? Because I think we just had a question that you're helping to answer right now. The folks from Viral Library asked, is there an easy way to download it? And it's going through that information button. You click it again, which takes you to a direct link to the Digital Howard site, where you can download and get metadata. You can get the full document PDF to be able to print out, as well as some basic metadata that we've left in there. And we want to be able to drive some folks to see the Howard site. There's all kinds of other cool stuff there too, so that helps.
Yes, good question.
Interrupt.
And then I already point out the collect button, and there's also the favorite, which will serve a similar function, but just automatically add to your favorites if you want to see this document again. But then getting into the, one last thing that needs some help with this task, we'll pull up some help text for some additional instructions as well. So those are sort of all the ways that you can sort of like help orient yourself before you get into the transcription. Once you're there, pretty much all the transcriptions will ask you some form of this question, whether it's typed, handwritten, or both. This is just to help us sort of lead you down a path to producing the best transcription possible. So for example, this one, you might say it has both, and then it'll just take you into a transcription. and you can just begin typing from there. There's some tools that the tutorial walks you through in case you want to show that something was crossed off, or there was an annotation made, or if you're unsure about a part of the text, you can mark that with that as well.
Sure, Justin, could you show real quick just how that works?
Sure. So if you want to mark that something, well, I'll go to the tutorial quickly just to sort of show where that is. So here it sort of like walks you through. And so let's say you want to show out the line and Julie Cooper's great was deleted. So it would end up looking like this. And so what you would just do, there's a couple ways to do it, but if, let's say this string of nonsense that I just typed, you want to show is deleted, you could highlight it, hit the deletion tool, and now you'll see deletion is bracketed around it. And then you can, type whatever came before it, whatever came after it. And then when we look at the transcription, we'll know that this part of the transcription was something that was perhaps crossed off that you wanted to mark that way. Same for an annotation. You can use the insertion tool, and same way, if you just click on it, it'll pop up, and then in between you can just type whatever was inserted. And the unclear tool works the same way. You can mark whatever was unclear using that tool. So those are how those tools work.
Right. If I could just emphasize, the unclear button is actually a really important one. Lots of times we find that folks are actually fairly sort of nervous about putting in the wrong stuff, that they're going to sort of be responsible for us getting the document wrong somehow. And that that button for the unclear is because we want folks to be able to guess and be able to signal to us, okay, I think that it's the letters THE, but I'm not totally sure, or the page is worn away, so I think it might be this. And even just some guess helps us to be able to make the projections. And Justin, you'll talk a little bit about some of our quality control in a bit, so I'll wait till then.
And so pretty much we just want people to try and transcribe top to bottom, left to right, as you would normally read a document in English. Sometimes it can get a little bit tricky if they're divided into columns, but for the most part, just going left to right, top to bottom is sort of how we want you to go through this. And so you'll type whatever transcription, hit next. So for this one, I'll just mark, this one asks you to do the handwritten parts first. Actually, each workflow, what we're in right now is called a workflow. It's just a series of questions. Might be a little bit different. So you might just pay attention to that. So this one will have you do the handwritten parts first. And then once you do that, again, going top to bottom, left to right, then I'll ask you to do the typed portions. You'll do any portions that you see typed. I won't hit done since I haven't actually transcribed this, but then you hit done and then it submits your transcription. And so that is pretty much how you go through a transcription. And then it'll take you to, if I were to hit done, it would take me to another document that I could transcribe. But you can always hit the transcribe Cooper button up here to come back to the home page if you want to go into a different category and look for perhaps something else to transcribe. So the other things that we have, unless anyone had another point to make about transcription, I can show some of the other features quickly.
I could just reiterate, I think you answered a few of the questions already. Thanks to Carol and Lauren for all the great questions, and the folks at Bio Library too. Do we want transcribers to try and replicate the layout of the document in terms of line breaks and page breaks and columns?
Yeah, so for the most part, no. There's some of the transcription workflows have an underline tool, which I can quickly show here.
For the most part, though, I think it's actually just that we need to reproduce the text characters, right?
Correct. Yes.
So we call it free text entry.
Yeah. So the only ones where, and again, lines don't really matter here, but you might, if for example the poems one has this underline tool, and just like it sounds, you would underline a specific line. And so in this case, you would go line by line. But yeah, we don't need line breaks or formatting preserved on any of the documents.
Great. A couple more questions that I think would be productive to share too. Somebody from the British Library asks, I'm looking at a document right now that has typewritten text and a seal. Do I need to describe or document the seal in any way? And I think maybe I might add the common example of a typed letter with a signature at the bottom. It's a similar example. What would you recommend that folks do?
For the most part, we don't need the seals transcribed. I think often you see those on postcards and things like that might have a stamp on it, and so no, we don't need those transcribed. But you know, if it's like a letterhead or something, that could be fine if it's sort of like indicating what this letter is. But if it's just like a more of like a standard seal in the corner, we generally don't need those transcribed. Signatures, if you're able to read them, can be transcribed. But yeah, I mean, I would say too, like if you end up transcribing more than you have to, it's not an issue. We can sort of deal with that. It's, I guess, err on the side of perhaps over transcribing, but for the most part, we're just looking for the text that Cooper herself wrote or typed, or that was written or typed to her.
Great. And then just a last few quick questions. Carol asked, I presume that I should reproduce any typographical errors?
Yeah, you can maintain various typos in the text.
Yeah, and I think that's an important one to emphasize too, because we don't want people to have to make educated calculations about what the text might say. Because sometimes we know that spellings change over time, that there's different sort of words that might appear to be off, but are actually sort of historically accurate. In addition to that, Lauren also asks if that line tool is available with all documents, and I think I can answer and say that that's only for very certain kinds of documents, right?
Yeah, we just wanted it for shorter documents just because it forces you to do line by line, and so some users don't necessarily like going through having to do it line by line, whereas the free text entry that I was showing you the first time allows you just to do everything at once, which makes it a little bit quicker. So I believe poems, notes, and then a few of the financial records have the line editor tool, but the rest are free text entry.
Yeah, I would say that the overall goal with these projects is not that we're creating polished, perfect editions ready to put on a bookshelf, but really trying to reproduce the words, the letters, the markings that are on the page into digital form so that we can start to build towards those larger editions and books and websites and making them more freely available. And so because we're not yet in that stage of doing the sort of editorial and documentary work, what we really want folks to do is just be able to help sort of replicate what's on the page in terms of typing. And so, you know, to Carol's second question about adding sick at the end of things, I think it's okay just to leave those off. We really just want to be able to reproduce the documents as materials that will let us start working.
Good point. Sabrina, do you have anything else to add about the transcription before I go on to some of the other features?
I guess, I don't know if it's a common question that's been asked, but like maybe you can let everyone know what to do if you find a document that is only an image.
Yeah, so that was one question that kind of popped up a lot in the some of the testing we did for this. So I'll see if I can quickly find one. I can just explain. I mean, some of the especially in correspondences, a lot of them are postcards. And if you, I'll try a couple more times and I'll just explain it because you don't really need to see it. But all right, well, let's just say this one was just an image. If you look at this first choice here, it says typed, handwritten, both, or neither. And you would just click on neither if it was just an image. You know, there's no writing. Or oh, okay, I'll have to make a slight adjustment to this one. But basically, we want it should. Sorry, this is why we still have a week to go to Douglas Day. But it should take you to a question that asks you to describe the document, and so it would just be like, you know, in like a sentence in a few words to say this is a dining room with tables and chairs or something like that. But the most important part is just if you don't see any words, just hit neither. And on Douglas Day, it will take you to the correct workflow, which is to just describe briefly what it is. And basically the thinking behind that is just if you wanted to search a specific postcard that you remembered the image on it, then we would have sort of a description of it to make it searchable that way. So that's a good point as well.
And maybe while you're still on that one, I was gonna say maybe you could say something about like what to do for things that are in a different language, and that would be the last thing.
I could do. Can you repeat, please?
Oh, what to do for this specific example? This is asking you to transcribe in a different language. What would one do in this situation?
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, we tried to separate out some of the ones that are in either French or Latin. Some of them got mixed in with the other ones, though. It's up to you if you want to attempt to transcribe this. You don't have to translate it at all. You just have to transcribe the letters. But the only thing that we would ask is that if you are going to attempt that you maintain the accent marks here. So if you're not comfortable with how to do that, because it requires the keyboard shortcuts, then you can always just refresh until you get one that's written in English as well.
And maybe that's a way also to emphasize just what a cool person Anna Julia Cooper was. She was a lifelong teacher and high school principal in Washington, D.C. And then she goes to Paris and gets a PhD in her 60s, if I'm not wrong. Writes a dissertation in record time in French. No big deal.
While she's teaching.
Yeah, making the rest of us look bad.
So good points. And yeah, I can just say, if you did want to specifically find the French and Latin ones, there is that workflow there. And most of those are in French and Latin, but some of them were mixed around. So good point. So then I can just quickly go through some of these other tabs. So the About tab, there's tabs within this as well. So the research one sort of gives a little bit of background on Cooper and the project. The team gives us some background on all the different team members involved in this project and brief bios for each of them. Education, if you want to know more about Cooper, there's some links to some information, some articles about her here. And probably most importantly, just in terms of getting, in terms of doing the transcriptions, is probably the FAQ, because it has some information about some of the questions that have been brought up. Like if you transcribe something wrong, some definitions, if in order to like help us better assist you if you need to know what a workflow is, how to pick a workflow, formatting. So there's a lot of questions that we tried to answer hopefully in the FAQ here. So that's all again in the About tab. The Classify tab, like I said before, will just take you to a random document. I don't know why it keeps taking us to the specific one, but if you click on Classify, it'll just take you to a random one if you don't feel like choosing a specific category. The Talk forum. So this is, I mentioned this briefly before, but this one is if you have to have an account to participate in the Talk forum, but we have some various different ones. You won't be able to see this one, but you'll be able to see the general discussion, the troubleshooting help, and the notes. So the general, they all have a little description. So if you're confused by an instruction or just have a question about something or a suggestion for how we might edit the site, because we can always still edit it on Douglas Day and going forward. That's where you can post that. Troubleshooting help is more for technical difficulties, and we'll try and respond to those if people post there. And then notes, if you have any sort of like inside knowledge on any of these documents and you want to share it, because the workflow doesn't allow you to necessarily share any information that you might have about the document that might be just cool for us to know, or that you just want to share with the community, you can put that there. So if you click on one, this is sort of what it'll look like. You can hit new discussion, or probably by then, there might be a discussion started that you can join into, and then you can, type out your comments. You can sort of like link to other users that might be using if you want to, link to one of us, or you can just type out your comment there.
And that I can emphasize, we have a whole kind of team that is ready to sort of watch both Twitter, Instagram, also the YouTube comments, and then also the forum, and we're all going to be communicating behind the scenes to be able to answer the questions as quickly as humanly possible. At this point, I think we have 9 or 10 sort of computers set up to be able to keep a close eye on those things. And if we find that there are questions that are coming up, we'll be able to pass that over to the folks who are on the live stream to be able to share with the wider groups. So we're going to have kind of some librarians and historians and project members who are sort of watching all these places intently. So you should be able to get pretty quick feedback there.
And I would also add, I don't know if Justin was going to say it, but that for the items that you might have collected from your transcription to save for later, you could use that to kind of show like, here's the document I was looking at. This is the specific question I have about this document, or this is a really cool document or a good find. And I just want everyone else to see it more for kind of the, well, you have to scroll down for me to know the title, but for the notes.
Yeah, so you can sort of, the collection tab doesn't just have to be for your own personal collection. You can also kind of like share that with other people and use it to discuss and use the talk forums for that. And I'll just say too, this is a really good place to go, especially for people at the satellite locations, because we won't be there in person to help you out. So this will be our only real source. This will be our most immediate source of contact. We'll have people on social media as well, but I think this one will be more primary in terms of troubleshooting issues. So then the collect tab that we mentioned is here as well. And I haven't done anything in my collections yet, but you can see, if you have other Zoomverse projects, it could be there, but this will be for whatever transcribe Cooper things you collect. The little heart favorite button that I was showing before, those will go here. Then you can create various folders for your collections. So that will all be collected here. And then the lab one you will not have access to. I'm not even sure the recent one. Now, the recent will just show you recent ones you've done if you want to see things you've done recently. So I guess that's another way to sort of access them. And like I said, the lab one is just for people who are working on the site. So those will be the 5 tabs you should have there. So yeah, I think that covers all the most pressing things about the website. So I don't know if there's anything, Jim or Sabrina, you want to add, or any questions I can answer about it.
Yeah, maybe if I could ask Denise, Sabrina, and you, Justin, to maybe help folks who are organizing events to think through. Somebody comes in, they're enthusiastic, they sit down and get started, and they're just having trouble getting traction. Denise, maybe what would you do if you're in the room and you find somebody that's having trouble either being able to read the document, maybe the platform is throwing up all kinds of roadblocks for them. What would be the best way to sort of help them out?
Part of what's been really useful, that's a great question. Part of what's been useful about Justin going through step by step at this stage, I would refresh a couple of times to find an easier document, or perhaps even have them log out and log back in and choose a different category. Very often when you're working with community members, the issues that will come up are actually fairly simple, just like, well, not comfortable working with this document, or I don't know how to move to the next thing. And sometimes it's just literally as simple as making gentle suggestions, or not gentle, polite suggestions, and on occasion choosing to deliberately transcribe a document together. And so you're working on one computer and it's both of you, and you can say, okay, well, let me see if I can figure out this part, and you help me so you make sure I don't get off track. And once everything is kind of resolved, because if you're dealing with older people or younger people who aren't as experience with moving around transcribing these documents or these kinds of websites, it can be intimidating, or it can be, yeah, intimidating is probably the best word to use. So for those of us who are a bit more familiar with this kind of work, working as a team solves a lot of it, because you're able to say, okay, I'm going to move through this part, help me stay on track, or am I getting this? And you're working together, but you're the one who's actually on the screen, on the keyboard, moving through. But if it's something simple like hitting refresh or logging out to log back in to make another category, or making sure that they even log in successfully, and sometimes it's very small things. It's just frustrating because, technology. So that would be some of the things I suggest. The last one being, how about we transcribe it together?
Mm-hmm.
And then you guys sit down and which I've done many times.
And that's actually something that we have learned from our volunteers across the years, is that sometimes folks who are just sitting next to each other in a room, or who might be able to be paired together, actually really enjoy getting to transcribe together, that they might have one person working the keyboard and clicking the buttons, and both of them get to kind of do the detective work, the kind of fun. Is that an A? Is that a P? Is that some kind of symbol? And we actually really, really encourage folks to try and transcribe in groups of 2 or even 3, which is also a great strategy if you have more bodies and people than you have machines. It's actually, I think, more fun to be able to sort of do it together lots of times. Justin, maybe could you answer real quick? I know we're coming up on the hour. We want to be able to get everything in before folks have to roll out. Say I'm a transcriber here in New Jersey, and I can't read a document, and I'm worried about it, and I want to make a guess, but I don't want to mess the whole project up by getting it wrong. Is there an internal project mechanism that you can describe that's going to help me maybe feel a little more comfortable?
Sure. So I'd say the first thing is that we do have the unclear tool if you want to signal to us that you're not sure about something. But the other thing that's cool about this project is that each transcription will have 3 people, or each document will have 3 people transcribing it. So even if your transcription might not be perfect, we should have 2 other transcriptions to compare it to and sort of combine it with to hopefully come up with the best transcription. So if you make a mistake, even if it's like just a typo on your end or something, it's not going to ruin the whole project. We'll be able to compare it to other transcriptions and hopefully come out with one that's as accurate as it can be.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, lots of quality control. That's oftentimes one of the most common questions we hear, of how do you make sure it's accurate? Great, and just a few questions rolling in here as the hour closes. Please feel free to add any questions that you might have to either the Google Doc. We've had some great questions as well on the YouTube comments. Of course, we will all be available nearly round the clock until February 14th. We're always happy to help.
And I want to add too that we will have YouTube video tutorials coming out in the near future that will have a lot of this information sort of stored, so you can watch someone sort of go through these steps in video if you need to go back to that. So those are being finished as we speak, actually. So
we're excited to share those with everybody. We'll also have a downloadable copy of all of the instructions related to Zooniverse. Oftentimes it can be just as helpful to have a printed out copy of the page, just sort of on a desk, maybe a stack of them for folks to be able to have next to their screen to make it all the easier. All right, so I think we're coming up on the hour. I wanted to maybe just add one last comment. So we will have the live stream broadcast that will start at noon on the dot next Friday, that will run for about half an hour, and then we'll have a break, and then we'll have a half an hour, and then we'll have a longer break until we wrap up at 3 o'clock-ish. We are going to leave the live stream playing the entire time. What we're going to do is just have a sort of placeholder screen that shows up just for the moment. My screen just changed. I hope we're still.
Oh, sorry, I just stopped sharing.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, sorry.
So we're going to be having the YouTube stream play the entire time, so you don't have to turn it on and off and hassle with that. And what we'll do is we'll have a kind of intermission screen with a graphic that just says, we'll be back at 1:30 or we'll be back at 2:45. And then in addition to that, we'll be splicing into tutorial videos into that stream after we finish that first segment. So at 12:30, there'll be about sort of 2 or 3 minutes worth of those tutorial videos that we want to make sure everybody gets a chance to see. And then you'll also be able to locate all of them on the website through links on the Zooniverse page and by just coming directly to our YouTube channel. We'll probably make sure those get out on social media as well. So we're coming up on the hour. I'd like to say thanks for everybody for joining us. We're incredibly excited to have the celebration. Please do not hesitate to be in touch. If there are any questions, comments, we've got a whole team of folks working down at Howard. They're actually working on the stagecraft right now. Shout out to Adrina, Kevin, and Shirley working on those things. We've got teams at Delaware, we've got teams at Princeton, Penn State, and far beyond at all of your locations. So we look forward to seeing you next week. Please share lots of photos on social media. We look forward to it. It brings us life and joy to get to be able to see all those things. Last words, Justin, Sabrina, Denise, the dream team of Zooniverse transcribing here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're just really looking forward to it. And like Jim said, we'll be around virtually to answer questions on the talk forums or social media. So please do reach out and someone will be sure to get back to you.
Great. Sabrina, Denise?
Yeah, I think I second most of Justin's words of we'll be there to support if there's any questions, and really looking forward to next week.
Absolutely. With a lot of excitement and anticipation, Douglas Day continues to build. And we're so glad you could join us for this trial run of our live broadcast. And we are super excited to see you next week.
Well, here we go. We will see everybody next to celebrate Douglas Day. All right. Stay safe in that weather out there, everybody. It's on the East Coast. We'll see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.